right, let's go ahead and get to some reacts. Yo, I saw a video about why Sparking is dead. I want to watch that. The rise and fall of Sparking Zero. The fact that there's even a
March
fall.
5th, 2023.
Shut up. Hold
Dragon Ball
on.
Gaming
Let me get what I gotta. Let me get what I gotta say off. Let me get what I gotta say. Let me get what I gotta say off. What is up with this PC? This shit got a mind of its own. Bro, the fact that this game is already dead and it just came out, that's sad. And it's been a year since release.
On March
since the announcement.
2023, we thought Dragon Ball Gaming had changed forever.
No! What?
Yo.
Everyone thought this was going to be the next Dragon Ball game they played for years. But unfortunately, just 6 months after launch, that isn't the case at all. What went wrong?
I don't think anime games will ever have a long shelf life, bro. I feel like the only old anime game that has really stood the test of time, Xenoverse 2. People still play that shit to this day. But other than that, they're like, these games are not trying to make groundbreaking titles. They're just trying to find ways to get your money, bro. Pokemon games are the best. I don't feel like that counts though.
How did the most anticipated Dragon Ball game possibly ever go from peak excitement to what we see today, a title that's been mostly forgotten? In today's video, we're going to dive deep into the complete story of Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, from its pre-release hype to the future of the series with an actual hint from the main producer himself. But what went wrong? Could it have been avoided? And most importantly, is there any hope for a revival? So sit back, maybe grab a G Fuel, use code NANO because we are sponsored by them, and let's take a look at the rise and fall of Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. To fully understand why Sparking Zero had so much motion pre-release, we have to go back to November 2002, where a company known as Dimps would develop the first truly notable and
Bro, I'm not gonna lie, all the games in those era, they're still good now. You could play those and still have fun. Bro, I grew up on literally the Budokai series, bro, and the Tenkaichi Budokai. That's why I was so hyped for this to come out.
Dragon Ball game in the West, Dragon Ball Z Budokai, which would go on to sell 3.5 million copies and spawn 2 sequels that would total a whopping 7.4 million copies sold for the original Budokai trilogy. However, Budokai plays closer to a Tekken style game and was very revolutionary compared to previous Dragon Ball titles by all means, but it didn't fully encapsulate the Dragon Ball experience, which is why Atari approached Spike to develop a Dragon Ball game where you could move freely and fight opponents in a large arena type stage that of course would become known as Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi, released in 2005. And just like the original Budokai series would also spawn 2 sequels, and the series would go on to sell an impressive 7.5.
Man, this is probably one of the best fighting games of all time. Because, bro, do you know that there's people in South America who only play Budokai Tenkaichi 3? They don't play nothing else. And they just run it on Dolphin emulator and just try to get as good as they possibly can. They don't play nothing else.
Million copies, with almost 4 million of those coming from just Budokai Tenkaichi 3 alone. If you combine the sales of the next 5 mainline Dragon Ball game releases, they still didn't sell as much as either Budokai 1 or Budokai Tenkaichi 3 did alone. So
those are
when you
iconic.
ask someone what their favorite original Dragon Ball game is, it's no surprise that the most common answer you get is one of the Budokai games or Budokai Tenkaichi games. Which is why 16 years later, after Budokai Tenkaichi 3 was released, no one was expecting what would happen at Dragon Ball Games Battle Hour 2023 right before a Dragon Ball Super card game tournament. It was so baffling. Arguably the biggest Dragon Ball game announcement of all time, placed 30 minutes after the Fighters tournament ended and right before a Dragon Ball Super card game tournament was beginning. No announcement to tune in from like any of their socials.
That's crazy that they had a card. I didn't even know that there was a card game.
Literally nothing. And the crazy thing is, this wasn't a remake announcement. This wasn't a remaster or a collection.
I don't think there could have been a more perfect time to announce the game either.
It was an actual sequel to Budokai Tenkaichi 3, or as it was known in Japan, Dragon Ball Z Sparking Meteor. And no one could believe it was real.
Tell me if you ever thought in your life this would happen right now, bro.
We obviously all
I love Afro.
Did a new Dragon Ball game at some point, but based on their track record, bringing back an old series just didn't seem possible, and now it was. Now it's real, and we all want to know more info about it. How many characters will it really have, and when will it be released? And all we're left with for 9 months is watching this 5-second clip of Super Saiyan Blue Goku on repeat. I feel like I watched that sequence so many times that I can close my eyes right now and still see it. But December 2023 at the Game Awards, we got our first real glimpse of what would now be known as Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Based on that very brief 60-second trailer, we were so back. It really looked like Budokai Tenkaichi with a modern coat of paint, and now somehow we were all even more excited than before. They followed that trailer up with our first substantial look at the game in action in March 2024. 2024, and now we mostly had our answer on gameplay. It at least looked like it played very similar to Budokai Tenkaichi with maybe a small touch of Raging Blast in there. So with that, most of the conversations around the game shifted. Now we wanted to know if they could actually deliver on the main thing Budokai Tenkaichi 3 was known for, its huge roster, which Bandai would slowly start to have an answer for as they rolled out character trailers throughout 2024, leading us to Summer Games Fest in June, where a select group of people were able to get their hands on the game for the first time ever, and the reception from those that played it was overwhelmingly positive. It was definitely faster paced, but the bones of Budokai Tenkaichi were there. So much so that
the game is fun. Don't get it twisted. It's just that they ruined the experience behind the game. The thing is, they didn't expect everyone to just run meta the whole time. Like, you had such an expansive character roster and everybody's just using Super Saiyan Vegito, SSJ4 Gogeta. If they're playing DPs, they're running Roshi and Yajirobe. And it just degraded the experience. And then it was like everybody just grinded until they got to Z rank. And after you do that, what's next? Like, they relied so heavily on the online experience and they relied so heavily on the story mode, but the story mode could be done quick. And ranking up and getting to Z rank it took everybody about a month. Let's be real.
Dion aka C-Reacts had a clip go viral of him using a BT3 combo in Sparking Zero, and it was the exact same. The first real hands-on gameplay wasn't the only thing we got from
they did have attention to detail with the combinations and some of the movesets though. That was tough.
Games Fest, because that's also when we got our answer to when it would be released. October 11th, 2024. The hype for Sparking Zero had reached new heights. People had played the game and it was actually fun. We had a release date and we had tons of footage from everyone's hands-on previews that people just couldn't get enough of. Personally speaking, Sparking Zero is some of the most viewed preview content ever on my channel. I've covered every Dragon Ball game released in the last decade.
Do you remember when they let all the big YouTubers play the game early and it was like a whole controversy about it because they were like, that wasn't fair to the smaller creators?
And nothing is really compared to what Sparking Zero was doing pre-launch. The only real concern that the fandom had at this point were some glaringly obvious characters missing from the roster that we had been shown so far. At the end of each trailer, they would show off this grid of characters.
GT Android 17 still's not in the game. And then you have Daima. They didn't even drop the new Super Saiyan 4. You're supposed to get on that shit quick, bro.
And of course, we would all speculate who could fill those final spots as the months went on. And fast forward to about a month before launch, we were still missing 2 sets of staple characters for Dragon Ball games, GT, and movies. Now, in the middle of September, we would get our answer on GT. Rest in peace, Super 17. But we were left wondering who they would cut from the game because there weren't enough spots left after the GT trailer to fit all the movie characters, which would then lead to one of the
I dropped the reaction on TikTok when they filled in all the movie slots. That shit banged.
better trailers they made for Sparking Zero, where Goku expands the grid.
And I'm not done yet!
Yeah, and then they pump faked everyone. I remember that, yup.
And that would be the final trailer before launch a few weeks later and bring our total character count at launch to 182 characters. The most ever in a Budokai Tenkaichi game. It really felt like they were going to do the impossible, release a proper sequel to one of the most beloved Dragon Ball games of all time 17 years later.
Imagine being a developer and like you busted your ass to make 182 characters and this game just fell off in a year. In less than a year.
Sparking Zero was officially out. People were buying consoles just to...
Bro, that was literally me. I swear to God, I bought my console just for Sparking Zero and GTA 6. No cap.
Play Sparking Zero. Creators that never cover or even play Dragon Ball games for content were playing Sparking Zero. The game sold 3 million copies just over the launch weekend. Dragon Ball gaming had never...
Bro, I'm not gonna lie, that first week was generational. Oh my God, that first week was so lit. That was when I just had moved out here too, so I was playing on the floor. Oh my God, I didn't even have a chair. I didn't even have a bed, but I had a PS5. I had a PS5 and I bought a monitor, but because it was before my monitors on my desk came, bro.
Never been that up, or so we thought. Now that the game was out in the wild, it was open to its first real criticisms. Obviously on launch day and even through until the next week, people were mostly positive about the game.
Bro, it's sad because there's literally memes about the game right now, about people not spending their money in game sharing. Oh my God, bro. Hold on, let's actually take a look at that. The fact that there's memes about people being happy that they didn't spend their money on the game tells you. Sparking Zero memes. See what pops up. Let's just look up Sparking Zero.
Rob nigga ass on foot, terrorize shit, I get a hang with the crook, shot him in the heart.
Oh my God. Yo, if you bought the game and you had a time machine, would you go back and stop yourself? Oh my God. POV, me thinking of all that money I spent in October on Sparking Zero, I want my refund. saw a lot of memes. This one went crazy. Just woke up from a nightmare that I dropped 70 on sparking and didn't even play it after the first day. Yeah, we were saying it. We were for real saying this was gonna be game of the year. Made me realize I gotta stop impulse buying stuff. This shit happens to every fighting game, by the way. Spent 116 on a sparking pre-order. If only they added co-op and crossplay on day one. I just got relieved getting my ass ready for school tomorrow just to find out I have no school so I can watch my Nizzy all night full glaze. Yo, what? Wait, why do you not have school? What the hell happened?
But as the honeymoon phase started to end, the cracks in Sparking Zero's armor started to show through with what we'll condense down into 5 main issues: story mode, custom battles, gameplay, online, and post-launch content.
Yeah.
Where's the rest of it?
One of the staples.
Bro, and then there's no competitive scene for this game at all, by the way. We'll pull that up when he talks about it. I'm getting too excited.
So the Budokai Tenkaichi series were the what-if scenarios.
Tough.
And while I do think Sparking Zero has 2 or 3 that I find pretty exceptional.
No, I mean, I think that whole like thing about the story mode where they had the what-if section where you could pick certain things and it would play out differently, that was fire.
Rest are very forgettable and very tame for a what-if in the world of Dragon Ball. However, it doesn't end with the lack of meaningful what-ifs in the story mode, as each character's story primarily focuses on select sagas from Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super, leaving out significant content from GT, OG Dragon Ball, and including none of the movies. With characters like Vegeta and Piccolo having their storyline cut off very short, with both ending in Z and not exploring anything from Dragon Ball Super. Part of the issue with Piccolo specifically is the lack of superhero being base game, which could have benefited both Piccolo and Gohan stories tremendously.
Yeah, they should have did that, but they got money hungry. They wanted to just throw it on a DLC, and they didn't even throw any new stages in there. Like Xenoverse did a better job with the superhero material than Sparking did.
And lastly, other than the Sparking episodes, the story mode is mostly just a slideshow, which really isn't something you'd expect from a game made in 2024.
Yeah.
Now, my argument on the side of Sparking Zero is that we didn't need a fully blown story mode in a Dragon Ball game again. A big difference between when BT3 released in 2007 and this game releasing in 2024 is that gaming has changed substantially. Back in the PS2 era of games, the content on the PS2 disc was all the content that game would ever have. DLC didn't really exist back then, nor were live service games nowhere near as prominent as they are today, like Fortnite, Valorant, Warzone, etc. So with all that in mind, we have Dragon Ball Z Kakarot that is continually getting updates, and even though it is missing some prominent moments.
See though, but at least they got Daima on there. Sparking doesn't even have that.
From Z, it is arguably the best way to experience the Dragon Ball Z story in game form. So we don't necessarily need another game that does that anytime soon. However, to argue against Sparking Zero, we needed more Sparking episodes. The main one people talk about is obviously Go On Black. It's the most out there what if, and it's exactly what we needed more of. I'll be honest, I did enjoy Goku's Super Saiyan in the Saiyan Saga timeline that ended with him fighting a Super Saiyan Vegeta on Namek.
That is tough.
Definitely a fantastic what if storyline, as well as the
Gonna go to the store. You want anything? I don't need anything, gang. I appreciate that. What you about to get from the store? Low key, I already hit a store run.
Other some Vegeta and Trunks moment against Cell, but I'm just surprised they didn't fully embrace more what if. I'm sure they were never trying to make a full encompassing story mode, whether by their own accord or from direct instructions from Bandai to not do so it wouldn't be a
How I survived the purchase of Sparking. Oh my god. Low key, should that be the title of the video?
Against Kakarot, but to say the what ifs and the story mode in this game was a letdown for most would probably be an understatement. Also, why are we over 6 months out from release and we still cannot play as Gohan Black? I don't get it.
It's the biggest piece of dog.
This mode pre-release sounded like such a game changer for Dragon Ball games. It appeared to have endless content for Sparking Zero and gave those who don't care about online PvP something to do. We were going to be able to build out all the what ifs and fanfiction moments we had dreamed of actually in game. What if Goku was trapped in the time chamber for forever? Yeah, go make it. It was going to be awesome, but it wasn't. Custom battles feels like such a lifeless mode that is a chore to use from both the creative side and the player side. This mode reminds me of Little Big Planet, except that you removed all the heart and soul. I think once you played a few of these, you've basically played them all. Plus the fact that all the voice lines aren't actually voiced and are already completely predetermined with no customization is the final nail in the coffin for this mode for most people. Because watching lifeless characters just stand there as text rolls out on screen to set up scenarios isn't exactly interesting. This is a very controversial topic within the fandom because many wish Sparking Zero played exactly like Budokai Tenkaichi 3, but I'm not sure how well that would have
Yeah, some people need to let go of the nostalgia, bro.
translated to a modern game. Have you gone back to play any games from the PS2 era? Yeah, most of them don't have the same feel that we've grown accustomed to with more modern games, which is why I imagine the devs opted for several of the changes we have in Sparking Zero. Outside of the movement changes, I think one of the biggest changes that has impacted most people's experience with Sparking Zero's gameplay is their emphasis on defense and counterattacks. The priority on counters in Sparking Zero compared to BT3 drastically changes the flow of the game, and is, in my opinion, the reason why I think most people say this doesn't feel like BT.
Like, because you get the infinite, the infinite counters and shit.
I think ultimately they were trying their best to appeal to those of us from the original Budokai Tenkaichi era, while also creating a new experience for people to enjoy who have become Dragon Ball fans in more recent years. It's not quite Budokai Tenkaichi or really any other Dragon Ball Arena fighter.
Why does it need to be a one-of-one though? Isn't that kind of stupid? Some of these gameplays look insane because the games were fire.
It's really its own formula, and with some minor changes, I think that is completely fine.
Right.
The online in this game boils down to basically two different modes: tournaments and ranked. I am very thankful that they kept tournament mode in this game, because it is definitely the most fun I've personally had online with Sparking Zero.
Right.
Ranked, on the other hand, is definitely
yeah, ranked as hell, bro.
something. I will stand by the fact that this game is meant to be unbalanced. UI Goku should by all accounts destroy a character like Jace in a game like this, but that does of course inherently create a problem for online ranked, especially in singles, and people like to use their favorite characters. Just so happens most people's favorite characters are also in their
I don't agree. I think if you're gonna play singles, it should be balanced, because then it promotes you to use other players in the game. The reason why the online experience was so dull in Sparking Zero was the fact that everybody was using the meta characters. They were using UI Goku, they were using Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, I said this before, they were using they were spamming the instant transmission with Vegito. They were just picking meta players to win. You have 182 characters, and you can name 5 characters that people were spamming.
at their strongest, aka UI Goku.
Dylan Brooks knocked out Curry? Are you serious? I'll pull up the clip after this. I'm kidding. Oh.
Shape 4 Gogeta, Beast, just to name a few. And that's the majority of what you'll see when diving into online rank. Good luck.
Yeah, bro. Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta. Oh my god.
They're Reddit's Banes. This is where the biggest problem for this game and its longevity arises. Once you finish all the episodes in story mode, you're left with two options if you still want to play Sparking Zero. Custom battles, which we've already discussed, is probably not going to retain too many players. And then online, which in an intentionally unbalanced game makes...
I think customs is supposed to be just like a little side thing that you do for fun.
For a mostly bad experience. A big difference between BT3 and Sparking Zero is that BT...
Yeah, people play BT3 for the sake of being good at BT3. They do it to be competitive. There's so many like little tips and tricks and little things that you can do in the game that a casual player wouldn't even know about versus a diehard.
BT3 didn't have online. The same unbalance was there.
No, they got online. No. You just need Dolphin Emulator.
You only ever played that game with your friends locally, and unless you were friends with someone from the competitive scene, you likely never experienced anything like this in BT3. While they can obviously combat that and have nerfed several different cheesy strats since launch, people that want to win in a game like this will likely always find some type of exploit they can take advantage of to improve.
Another thing I didn't like was like how strong the ultimates were. You just get... Bro, if you had a character that had 3 health bars, you would just need to get them slightly under 2 and hit them with an ultimate and it'd be over with. The fights would go by way too fast. It wasn't actually about skill. It was more of like an arcade kind of game.
Prove their chances of winning,
but that's arena fighters.
Your experience and chances of you ever playing this game again, which is why I think most people have actually stepped away from this game. Sparking Zero has received...
Bro, do you remember when 90% of the player base just left and all the players were in denial? I made a TikTok about it. It went viral and everybody was so mad that I exposed the truth. They're like, no, dude, it's just, that's PC. That just happens to every single game. People stop playing games all the time. There's still players in games on console, when in reality, I have the game on console. And when I played it on ranked, it would take like 5 minutes to find a game. It's still like that to this day.
Several patches that have fixed a lot of the initial issues people had with this game. Adjustment to skill cost, counters, and tons of different adjustments to the battle system, but also...
Yeah, one thing that they did that I liked, they got on the, they updated the game quick. Like, they balanced out the Yajirobe method, whoa, I can't talk. They balanced out the Yajirobe meta so fast.
Ultimately, balance patches are only going to appeal to so many players. They aren't exactly going to get people that haven't touched the game since week 1 to come back all of a sudden because they rebalanced this move or that move or this skill. It really takes new modes, new characters, and just new content in general to get new players and old players back interested in your game.
Agreed.
You don't see Fortnite's player population spike because they just made adjustments to certain weapons. It's when new modes or new seasons start with completely new.
I agree. They stay dropping new shit in Fortnite all the time. And another thing, Fortnite has like infinite game modes. They turned it into Roblox.
Content that get people to come back to the game or possibly download it for the first time ever. In the 6 months since launch, we've really only had 2 main content drops so far. Superhero DLC pack that had 11 characters in it and 1 new mode.
11 characters in it. Three different versions of the same character. Well, really 4. And then the gigantified characters are horrible. Nobody even plays them. It ruins the whole flow of the game. They're boring. It sucks. It's not enjoyable.
Called Legendary Warrior Face Off, where you take on an extremely difficult AI controlled character, and that's it. To say most of us were disappointed by the Superhero DLC pack is definitely an understatement.
Yeah, and then they only got like a few stages in the game. They haven't added anything new.
I think most of us expected stages to be included with the characters at bare minimum, especially given there's only 11 stages in the base game. And stop, Destroyed Namek does not count as an additional stage. It's basically just Namek. I also really thought it would include some content for the game's story mode and Gohan and Piccolo's episode battles, but unfortunately that was not the case. A Dragon Ball game that has surprisingly managed to maintain its player base and shocked most of us is Xenoverse 2. That game is currently—
You know how many times I've bought that game over? I think I've bought that game like 3 different times. I swear. I had bought it once when it came out on Xbox, then I switched to PlayStation, so I got it for PlayStation 4, and then I recently bought it for PC before Sparking came out, and I was playing the game heavy. Oh my god.
Working towards 9 years of decently consistent updates, which is something I don't think most of us expected back in 2016 when Xenoverse 2 initially launched. Xenoverse 2, though, has 2 major differences from Sparking Zero that has likely contributed to its longevity: create a character and co-op. Sparking Zero has some customization, but unfortunately it is yet another weak spot for this game. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of CACs in Dragon Ball games, but they do offer a ton of opportunities for replayable content.
That's the fun part. Zay Finn, thank you for the raid, gang.
You can drop new cosmetics or skills that you can farm to give to your CAC that Sparking Zero just can't do. In Xenoverse, it actually gives you a reason to want to play the game, and since they act as—
there's a lot more content. Parallel quests. You got like, there's like 2 different kinds of quests, but nobody plays the other ones. You know which ones I'm talking about, like the dark quests or whatever they're called, bro. And then the online is cool, but bro, some of those people be sweats. Oh my god.
Robs, it also gives you something to work toward. Then there's the co-op aspect of Xenoverse 2, which is also pretty huge. You can do team fights or actual raid bosses where you get to—
the shit with the raid bosses. That's what I was talking about.
Work together with your friends instead of always just fighting them. Because games like Apex, Warzone, and Fortnite are also popular because you can hop on with your friends each night and team up to work towards a common goal. And that's something you just can't do in Sparking Zero. And I know you could say, well, what about insert fighting game here? But the issue with that is that this isn't designed like those games.
The reason why people play games like Tekken and Street Fighter and the reason why they retain their online player base is because people play those games with the intention of being good at the game. So they can play games over and over and over again because they're trying to close the skill gap. They actually want to be good because there's an actual competitive scene and a lot of opportunities for them to showcase that. You want to see the opportunity that they had for competitive? Let me show you. Watch this. Deadass. Waste of $100. This is what they did in the France qualifiers. You ready? Yes, that Android bullshit where they were just jumping up and down.
Dragon Ball Sparking Zero has a huge problem. The problems of their creators qualifiers. The utmost
Look at this.
What we saw was the grand finals included some of the utmost cheese. We saw Dr. Gero straight flying up and down, up and down, up and down. Then we saw Android 19.
I think they did this out of retaliation to let them know how broken the game was too. And rather than improving that, they just let the game die. That's kind of sad.
Doing the same thing.
Hold on, I'm trying to put this to S1080p.
Somebody posted this in the community and they said that this was pretty disappointing and that December patch cannot come soon enough. I commented and they said that they were actually told that this was done intentionally to draw attention to the developers to the game's problems. The winner of the grand finals, Siryu, he had quote tweeted my post I made in the Dragon Ball Sparking Zero community. As I said, you guys see the qualifiers, do you think this sent a message to the state of the game? And he said me and the other person,
me and Hillisaur were fighting with the most broken teams. I really hope Bandai will see this as an opportunity to make the game better. My god.
can't say their name.
Oh my God.
Hylia, were fighting with the most broken teams. Really hope Bandai will see this as an opportunity to make the game better. So this, in fact, did, or rather...
Yeah, there's no competitive scene for this game.
And since they embrace the party game aspect of Sparking Zero, I think it would benefit heavily from some co-op type modes. And I think that Legendary Warrior Face-Off mode would have benefited tremendously from co-op in Sparking Zero. That mode sounded really cool, and I actually had slight hopes that they would implement some type of co-op type mode for it. Of course, they did not, but just going on there and fighting a really difficult AI completely by myself does not entice me that much. However, if there was actually built-in co-op to go take on this raid boss with my friends, I would have done it multiple times over at this.
Yeah, but like Sparking Zero isn't that kind of game to have raid bosses and co-op and all that type of stuff. It's supposed to be a competitive fighter, like how it was back in the day.
That mode was begging for co-op so badly that the three idiots had to do this crazy workaround in 2025 so that they could take on this huge new crazy AI boss in a cooperative play using, I'm sure, some sort of Steam remote play or something like that. So the three idiots going through hoops to turn a single player mode into a cooperative play mode, I think goes to show how badly this game, especially being a party game.
Oh, so it'd be like everybody gets their shot, right?
Needed some sort of cooperative feature to allow you to actually play with your friends versus just having to play against them all the time.
Okay, I see the vision of what he was trying to say. Like everybody gets their shot.
Obviously, we have the 2 Time DLCs to look forward to.
Bro, nobody wants to play as Glorio. Where is Super Saiyan 4?
I think with their current post-launch content pace and a lack of any other real announcements at the moment, they are likely looking forward to the future beyond Sparking Zero. I mentioned this in the beginning, but during an interview, Furuatani, the producer of Sparking Zero, stated that the game is designed to be a new foundation for the future sequels in this series. So as a starting point, I think Sparking Zero is great. I don't necessarily think it's quite to the level of Xenoverse 2 where they could
so you think they're gonna make a continuation and make it better? Like a Sparking Zero 2?
update it through patches and DLCs.
Sparking 1?
Imagine we need a proper sequel or 2 before we could see what this series could truly become. And hey, when I ask most people what
y'all aren't getting my money this time around. I'm sorry. I'm game sharing. I was the person to game share. I need whoever, hey, any one of my friends, if y'all come across this, I'm game sharing off you, bro. I'm not gonna be the one to spend the cheese.
their favorite Tenkaichi game is, they never say one. It's usually an overwhelming amount of Budokai Tenkaichi 3s with a few BT2s sprinkled in there. I see a lot of people thinking of Free Sparking Zero the same way they've treated Xenoverse 2, and that will be getting DLC for the next decade. But I truly believe we'll have a sequel to Sparking Zero in the next couple of years instead. I think the series has an incredibly bright future. I think that
I wonder what people got to say about this.
Sparking Zero is a fantastic foundation for what will likely become a new trilogy of games. And while this game obviously has some shortcomings with the customization features,
I mean, if this is like the start of a trilogy, this is a decent start. I'll be honest.
Episode battle, this game is a blast when you're playing with friends. And if you haven't played it in a while, they actually patched in where all the maps are available on offline play with your friends. So ultimately, I think they did a great
just added that
job in reviving a series that we thought was once dead 17 years later. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button for me. It would help out a ton. Of course,
this was a really good, well thought out, well researched video. Shout out Nanogenics, man. This is my thoughts on the game. Now that we're this many months into its lifespan, I'll break it down the way you did too. As a core DB game, I think it's very good, very well made, but it's missing a lot of those elements that made the other DB games have had in the past to make it just right, if that makes sense. Anyways, here's my thoughts. Warning, this will... Okay, I'm not reading all that. All right.